All right. Good morning, everybody. This is a call to order. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on to,
I think the gavel, like.
pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. On to,
Jason said they recorded at the end, is that correct? Correct, yes.
all right. Gail doing the roll call.
Yes, she is.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Okay, roll call. Lynn Hertak is excused. Cal Hardy,
Running late,
Yanika Mills,
present.
Kevin O'Hare, I believe he's running late today as well. David Hay,
Here.
Emily Hinsdale.
Yes.
Chris Thompson, Danielle Riffenberg,
Here.
Larry Josephson,
Here.
Karen Kress, I believe she's excused. Rebecca Hessinger,
Here.
Justin Willits, Jesus Peraza Garcia, Omar Alvarado, Scott Drainville, Bobby Edwards, Jason Jackman,
Here.
and I believe Anna Quinones and Robert Fryer also excused today. Glormar Belangia,
Here.
Carlos Ramirez, Una Johnson, Catherine Coyle,
Here.
Melissa Colazzo, Arizona Jenkins, Gus Ignis, Bryn Dauphiné.
Here.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm showing 10 in person. Is that correct, Lisa?
At least 9. 9 in person.
Okay, we do have an in-person quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, me.
Do we have any public comment?
Unless there's someone in the audience that would like to share.
So probably not. All right, next on to the approval of minutes from the August 16th meeting. Everyone get a chance to look at them and we have a motion to approve.
Move your group. Sorry,
Uh,
Ms. Rebecca, the second.
No, Bryn was the second.
Brandon, okay.
Bryn was the second. Kathy was
Nice
the
now.
motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. All right, on to our first action item. It's a memorandum of understanding on creating the Tampa Bay PO. We have Elizabeth White. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. So the presentation today is on this MOU that is circulating that will go to the TPO board in October for consideration, essentially starting the process to consider merging the 3 MPOs, which are Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas in the Tampa Bay region. So for those of you who've been around the MPO world for a while, you know this is a perennial conversation. Most recently, T-BARTA did a study, I think in 2019, exploring this, and the kind of lots of analysis was done, but ultimately it sat on a shelf. To quickly orient you, this is a map of the Tampa St. Pete Transportation Management Area. And this is really important because this is the foundation for an MPO. It sets up the enabling authority, funding, lots of things are established by this geography. And you'll notice it crosses county lines into the three counties. So I mentioned this is a perennial discussion. So what was the impetus to bring this up now? Well, in this most recent legislative session, a law was passed requiring the 3 MPOs to submit a feasibility report exploring the benefits, costs, and process of consolidation into a single MPO. So that report is being assembled and will be submitted to Tallahassee by the end of the year. This MOU is essentially filling out the requirement of that process of consolidation. We'll get into the details of it, but essentially what this MOU is trying to do is lay out a locally driven process to work towards a merger of the 3 MPOs. So this is a very complex issue, and there are many people who are advocates and opponents of it. So some of the advocates would say having a regional MPO helps to build trust and collaboration. Having this one voice that speaks on behalf of the region, especially in light of the dissolution of TBARDA that is currently underway. It also would help define the transportation agenda, and Secretary Gwynn will make the comment that he thinks, in his experience, when he goes to Tallahassee to ask for funding, he sees Orlando, Jacksonville outcompeting Tampa because they are speaking with that one voice and have that one set transportation agenda that they're working on together. Having a merger could also help us more closely align regional transportation with the regional economic development. I think we all inherently know there's a lot of economic implications on our transportation system, whether that's just moving people, freight, goods. There are significant economic impacts. And merging would also make us the largest MPO in Florida, which could potentially have more weight in Tallahassee and also in DC because you have a larger group of elected officials lobbying and advocating around the same purpose. But again, this is a complex issue. So some opponents will say, hey, doing this actually minimizes local projects and minimizes smaller communities and neighborhoods who currently have a lot of influence since there are 3 MPOs. They're very focused on Hillsborough issues, Pinellas issues, Pasco issues. Additionally, this does not guarantee any more funding. There is a set pot that's done by formula, and that pot will not increase with regional. There's a possibility for discretionary funds, like I mentioned in the pros, that we could be more effective, but again, that is not a guarantee. Additionally, one thing we've heard over the years is we need more regional transit, we need more transit, but a regional MPO would not change that need or mitigate that need for local funds to operate that regional transit. And right now, 2 of the 3 MPOs, Hillsborough and Forward Pinellas, where the MPOs are situated in their land use planning agency, so that has a lot of synergies when reviewing comprehensive plan site developments with transportation investments. So if that was removed, there could be a weakened coordination between transportation and land use. So the actual MOU is in your packet, but I'll just hit the high points for you. Again, the purpose of the MOU is to set out a locally driven approach to merging with various principles of agreement. The MOU does not commit us to a merger. All it does is say, hey, we will pursue this given these principles, and we have a goal to merge by July 1st, 2027. But executing this MOU does not commit us to a merger. So what does that MOU say? One of the things it lays out is apportionment, or its voting membership, that it must be proportional representation based on population. Additionally, the governance structure is something that the MOU highlights, where voting membership should be prioritized for elected officials and potentially have seats for transportation operators because they have a unique voice in the region. It also talks about balancing local and regional needs. We can look to models around the country on how MPOs can set aside funds for more of those smaller scale projects, resurfacing, intersection improvements, sidewalks. So there's a way that we could balance it, just has to be very thoughtful upfront. And funding of the MPO, the staff, the operations, the MOU makes clear that a long-term funding commitment is needed to continue the program. The MOU also emphasizes the importance of outreach with not only the community, but with local jurisdictions. And it also lays out a variety of principles to continue to have those federally required plans and programs, your TIP, your long-range plans, to stay in place to ensure that it doesn't disrupt the flow of federal funds to the region. So merging MPOs is incredibly complex. There is not an example in Florida that we could look to. There are many decision points that need to be made, hence the 2027 deadline. This is just a proposed timeline of some of those key decision points and how staff has proposed that they be tackled. But I'll just point your attention to 2023. So the things that we're focused on right now are, one, getting agreement from the 3 MPOs on the MOU, making progress on what that apportionment plan looks like, that voting structure, as well as getting some input on what a business model and budget should look like, because there are many different scenarios. So really trying to hone in on what will work for our region, as well as focusing on outreach to local governments and the public. So we recently concluded a public input survey that was a partnership between the 3 MPOs. It only took about 5 minutes, and we got some really good input. We got over 1,700 responses, and one of the questions was asked for geography, and of course, some people didn't provide, about 21% didn't provide that, but the participants from Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco, it was like proportional to the population. So we felt really good about that, that the proportion of the population, like this could be interpreted that it fairly assessed the merged MPO population. So one of the things we heard were, what were the top 3 important points for transportation plans and programs to accomplish? And first, across all respondents, and in particular Hillsborough County, these were the top 3. Connecting people to where they want to go, where they need to work, where they live, work, and play. It was also a priority to make decisions based on data, as well as support multimodal options and projects. One of the questions was giving participants $100. How would you allocate that to different projects? And at the top, a third of the budget went, people said, let's build new rapid transit systems. And the second highest priority was widen and extended roadways. And then third was maintaining and improving bus service. We asked a few questions in terms of trade-offs for governance. So one of the questions was, where should decisions be made about your transportation infrastructure? Should it be made by a regional group, or should it be made by a local group? And for this question and the other 2 on the screen, it was split. It was like 40-30, wasn't really clear on if there's a preference. And what I think that really speaks to is that there are many ways to skin this cat. We just have to be thoughtful about how we do it and have our guiding principles and working towards them, and continuing to seek input from stakeholders and the public. So we didn't get a clear answer from the public on these governance questions, but we did hear loud and clear from when we asked who should be the voting members of those decision makers. And 70% of respondents in Hillsborough County, as well as all participants, said that they would support having technical staff like the Hillsborough County TPO has. We have representatives from the airport, the Port Authority, the Transit Agency, and the Planning Commission. So there seems to be support for that type of structure. So I know I'm throwing a lot on you, not just the MOU, but another thing I'd love your feedback on today is, if this merger goes forward, what would you want to see to the Livable Roadways Committee? So this is just a matrix of all of the committees across the 3 MPOs, and Livable Roadways is unique. You have a unique mission, and that I think should probably be preserved. So I would really love your input today on how that would translate. Would you advocate to continue to have a Livable Roadways Committee in just Hillsborough County, or maybe even expand to the region? Just curious on your thoughts about what Livable Roadways Committee could look like if this merger were to go forward in 2027. So just to wrap up with some next steps, this Friday, the Transportation Management Area Leadership Group, which is a body of representatives from the 3 MPOs, will meet to review the MOU, have some additional conversations about voting membership and the business model. And then from there, each of the MPOs will consider that MOU and execute that sometime this fall. And then by December 1st, we will have that feasibility plan that was required by the legislature go to the TMA leadership group and then submitted to the governor and the legislature. So the recommendation before you today is to recommend that the TPO board sign the MOU. And I'd be happy to take your comments or answer any questions.
How do you all feel about it? That's a weird question.
Johnny, how do you feel?
Well, one thing I would say, if you would have a transportation, we need to make it more available. Because people work and like, yeah, there was a business that thought and it's up a line, depending on what area you're living. And you all know that you live on one side of the county, you think you work on the other side. So you live in Livable, you work downtown, or you work in a McDonald's, that on their way, but you can't get home like the because there's nobody else. Now for us, this business, we have a door-to-door service. And that's based on the regular bus. The regular bus, doesn't run like the van. But you go to Orlando, they have 24-hour service. I think we don't have any. We did the biggest in Orlando. We get many people, man. We just had a 24-hour service here too.
Good points.
So I was pleased to see the results that had transit ranked 2 of the 3 at the top. So I was like, oh, maybe staff can then collectively work hard to pursue regional funding to help increase transit for the Tri-County area.
But it's bringing more jobs.
Yep.
It's bringing more, yeah, we need to get that train, and that train to go, make it work. We need to get that.
Okay, but today the topic is how should we be organized into a regional TPO? So what are your thoughts on the example laid out?
I would just voice the concern about schools. Schools are the largest single driver of transportation in all 3 of these counties, or for individual transportation. But each of the school districts operates very separately. Pasco has had its questions over busing over the years. Hillsborough has its way of doing busing. Pinellas has a much larger charter and magnet system, which changes the way transportation moves. So if you're going to do any kind of regional conversation, finding a way to incorporate all 3 school districts, and like, let's be honest, school districts don't play very well with the MPO as it is. They are kind of in and out and change their staff, and it's very hard to do planning with them. How are you going to ensure that all of the school districts' needs are equally met so that we're reflecting that transportation planning around that school-driven transportation? And I certainly think you would need localized committees to consider transportation for schools at the very least.
Right, and if the schools representatives got moved to Livable Roadways, if Livable Roadways, since it's unique, doesn't transfer, then it might be appropriate to move that representation to the TAC again, so.
That's really good feedback. And especially your point about making sure school boards are involved in this process. I'll make sure that we have them on our stakeholder list. Because right now, Hillsborough TPO is the only one that has a school board member on its board. The other 2 don't even have that representation.
Yes, and honestly, I still think that 1 school board member is not enough, given the level of transportation that schools drive in our community.
Kathy?
Just to piggyback on Emily's comment with, I'm just thinking through the whole thing, because Pasco in itself is really two different worlds, east and west. And just trying to merge all this is just kind of nuts. When you did the survey, did Hillsborough lead it? I'm putting myself in Pasco's seat, being kind of the smallest one, like Hillsborough is the behemoth in this. Is there any concern that like Hillsborough is going to drive the bus? Sorry to say it that way. But in the end, if it's all merged, is there a concern that Hillsborough, Tampa, for instance, is going to be really running the show? Because you have a 25-member
Right, you can
board.
live 25 seats.
Yeah.
On this board.
And I can't imagine them giving 3 up for the school boards. You know, I just can't, which is a shame. But
That is one criticism that some people are concerned about, but it's also been flipped. I think Hillsborough representatives have also said, well, what if the other two gang up on us? So I think there's definitely some trust to be built through this process and some very valid concerns to be worked out for voting membership, for funding, allocations, all of that.
Have you, the survey was, well,
Oh, but the survey was developed jointly. It was promoted equally in all of the counties. When I made the comment about it was proportional, it was, about 20% of the regional population is in Pasco. And that was generally what we had here, about 50% Hillsborough, and that was generally the response rate. But it was a joint effort between the 3 MPOs, promoted equally and pushed as much as we could.
is this purely an action because the state legislature said you had to? Is there any real desire from the local agencies to actually join?
Yeah, there's definitely opinions on both sides. There's definitely not consensus. So this MOU though, I think is a good step in the right direction to just commit to, hey, we'll look at this, kind of get Tallahassee off your back a little bit and have a locally driven approach if this were to come to fruition.
I believe discussions were happening before the legislation action.
Yeah, the Tampa Bay Partnership has been advocating for this for a long time.
Lastly, I would hate to see the little Roadways committee dissolve. I mean, when you see the matrix up there, it's easy, especially when you go through these big mergers like this, it's easy just to cut out the ones that only have one X in a box. Let's just send the herd, which ones are the most important, and they get moved over to the good ones. And we would just get thrown out. I would hate to see that happen. Because
sorry.
We do have crossover with other committees, obviously, but we have a different lens, I think. I don't know, the perspective we bring, especially with all the different members that we have. I would like to see it across all agencies, especially if it's merged one big group.
If it came down to choosing merging with another committee, would that be stay in existence? And if so, what?
I don't see a place to raise my hand. Can I?
Someone said no.
This is Michelle Orton with the school district, Hillsborough. My concern was also on voting because Pinellas County has 24 cities. I don't know how many votes they get, but that's pretty big. And I don't know how many Hillsborough has. As long as we can maintain, that voting, that we all get the same amount. I know you just talked about that, but my concern is also I-4. Considered the worst portion is in Hillsborough County. Maybe if we had some help from Pinellas County, then, any help I think would be great. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Great, thank you.
I just want to make sure this only commits us to looking at it in a more formal way, right? It doesn't commit any decision making, and you can say this doesn't work at any point.
Any of the boards could do that.
Are they all voting at the same time, or is Hillsborough the first one?
I'm not sure how it's going to be sequenced. Hillsborough's considering it in October. I believe Pinellas is as well. So it has,
Okay.
it'll either be October or November.
So let me ask a question, but if one of the 3 counties just at the last minute gets cold feet, all this kind of dies, and what is the plan then to address the state if one of the three get cold feet?
So we would probably have to provide a narrative of what was done and propose a process to continue to work towards that. But the speculation is, this MOU shows kind of the united front and looking at it. If one doesn't, will the legislature come back with more of a heavy hand? So it's all speculative at this point. We'll see what happens in the next few months.
Because currently the legislature says do a study,
Right.
which this is all getting refined and turned in as the study results by the December deadline. Then their next step.
This is him, well,
Passes.
Yep. Pinellas and Pasco and Tampa are the,
Hillsborough. All right, well, we need
Okay.
an action on it.
Move to recommend approval with the comments from Emily about the school board voting.
Can I just make one more comment? This won't be your last time to hear this. So as these, as this comes forward, we'll be back to committees to give you more input. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Have a second.
I abstain.
Well, unless you have a conflict of interest, you can't abstain as a committee member. You're required as a member to participate. So if you can identify a conflict, then that'd be great. Like we had something before the board and you had a professional stake in it, and you were voting on a site plan and your firm did the site plan, that's a conflict. I'm just telling you what the term.
Okay. Well, I abstain as a representative of the county, and I do not know what my superiors would want me to vote on this, so I
Okay.
abstain.
All right, so.
Do we have a quorum now? If you abstain, we have a quorum.
Oh, Arizona came.
Oh, it is.
Right. So we do have a quorum.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Yes. All right. So,
Question, Chair. First of all, who was the second on that motion?
Danielle.
Oh, Danielle.
Thank you. And then the next question is if Mr. Josephson is abstaining, he does not count towards quorum at that point. Do you still have that?
Yes, Arizona came in at 9:10.
Okay,
So-
fantastic. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to text you.
We have, right,
Yes, we do.
Lisa confirms. So, okay.
19 was in the room.
So just to recap, you're moving with the addition of Emily's comments about the school board representation.
Well, and then do you want to add on your observation that it sounded like you wanted to keep this committee?
Oh, yeah, and to keep the Livable Roadways committee.
Do you want,
Can I ask, are you saying keep Livable Roadways Committee for Hillsborough, or have one in each county, or have one for the whole thing?
We'll keep it in Hillsborough, but then if it's merged in the larger group. I can't dictate to whether or not they have one.
And
Then the other county understand what we do.
the other counties what?
You know what this board do.
No, we don't know. This is, again, just a motion to have the board consider moving forward and studying this and refining it further. We're not setting anything in stone today, and we are only an advisory committee
right,
to the
where
board.
isn't that,
They've already modified it significantly since the first one you looked at, so yeah, it's gonna keep moving. 2027, just keep that in mind. Earliest, 2027, so you'll see several iterations. We're just getting feedback at this point so that Elizabeth and the board can consider the ideas of their advisory committees. And we're advising, keep schools involved somehow, keep livable roadways involved, at least on the local level possibly, is what I'm understanding. So it's just to move the motion forward. Right now, she's just got notes unless it's in the form of a motion.
all right, so
Okay,
all in favor,
I'm
say
gonna
aye.
restate it.
Oh,
I'm gonna restate it,
yes,
okay.
go for it.
Okay, so I move that the board approve the MOU with the addition that there is representative, school board representation for all 3 school boards on the 25-person committee, board, whatever it is. And that Livable Roadways be elevated to become an actual board. If this merger goes through, that it becomes a board, a committee to the merged board that stays intact in an important role. There you go, that's it.
Correct. Do you agree with all that? All right. Okay. Double check.
Yeah. What I said. And then Danielle seconds.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
And Gail Calhardy joined me.
All right. So we got one down.
Thank you.
Next, we're on to 2050 plan revenue forecast.
I've got all the fun things for you this morning. So today I'll be presenting to you the draft revenue forecast that will inform the long-range transportation plan. And this is a really important building block to developing that plan. A requirement is that the plan be fiscally constrained, meaning that you have enough revenues to support all the programs and projects that you have documented in that 2050 plan. So this is really that first step of saying, okay, what do we have available through 2050? And then what else, what other funding sources could we have available to us in 2050? So I'm going to go over just that, what is existing from at the federal, state level, the regional level, and the local level, as well as a summary of potential funding sources, and then lay out some next steps. But one thing I want to make very clear up front is this was not done in a vacuum. We met early and often with representatives from each of the 4 local governments, as well as transportation operators, so that we accurately incorporated their financial information. So what that looked like is we worked with people from Public Works, their top finance officials, and made sure that they were comfortable with the numbers projected in this report. So we definitely appreciate that support. And we also had a great partner in the Department of Transportation. They published and shared a 2050 revenue forecast handbook where they got all their top economists in Tallahassee and put together a forecast for those state and federal funds so that we could use that and incorporate that by reference in this forecast. So I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you, but the thing I want to make sure is clear is that these funding sources are across basically a 20-year time frame. So it's forecasted amount from 2031 to 2050. Also, transportation funding is complex because not only are there different eligibilities and red tape with each funding source, there's different operators or different decision makers. So to start it off, this is the federal and the state grants, and these are all the funds that are expected to be available in Hillsborough County and managed through District 7 of the department. So there are a variety of funding sources available to them. On the far left, you'll see we've forecasted about $3.5 billion for projects on the strategic intermodal system. So that's our big regional network, our arterials, our limited access facilities. And then also the next highest pot is for their operations and maintenance and bridge repair and resurfacing program. The remainder of the programs here are for safety, non-motorized transportation, and other transportation projects that may be needed on the federal aid or state system. You'll notice after that slide, everything else seems very small in comparison. And we thought that was important to communicate because, you know, there are different decision makers and DOT has deep pockets compared to the MPO or local governments. So this image shows the projections for the suballocated funds to the MPO. So in orange, that's our Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, our SU. That's our most flexible funding program. Those funds can be used for transit, for widening, for intersection improvements, for sidewalks. They're great and flexible, but they are in high demand. And we're projecting to have about 358 million available from 2031 through 2050. The other programs are carbon reduction, which is very similar to CMAQ, if you're familiar with those projects that reduce emissions. In gray is transportation alternatives, so there's no non-motorized transportation. And in yellow, that's our Transportation Regional Incentive Program. And that's a small pot of funding intended for local but regional projects. This next slide projects transit funding that are come through federal or state grants. So things that come through the Federal Transit Administration or the State Department of Transportation to Heart and Sunshine Line to operate their service. This slide is an overview of the state and local transportation programs, in particular, the constitutional, county, and municipal fuel tax. It may not look like a lot on this slide, especially over 20 years, but this is a major source of funding for transportation projects at the local level. So the county gets the majority of that because they're entitled to the constitutional tax as well as the first local option surtax. So other local revenue sources that we have documented here is, of course, through streetcar and Heart, their collections from property tax, from fares, from advertising, from ad valorem that supports the Sunshine Line. Also, you'll see the transportation impact fees and mobility fees. That is another very, very important source of transportation funding to our local governments. And then that first local option fuel tax. Currently, we leave 5 cents on the table in Hillsborough County. There is a second option local fuel tax, but the county has not pursued that as an option, but we are leaving 5 cents on the table. So one of the exciting things with this, which I know, how could this ever be exciting, but brainstorming what are some other potential funding sources? Because it's not communicated clearly through here, but I think you all know as transportation professionals, there are many more needs than there are funds. So we looked into a variety of options. One thing that we heard from the Citizens Advisory Committee is the desire to use more innovative financing tools such as value capture, tax increment financing to help jumpstart and put some seed money towards these projects. No funding estimates were developed for these because they're more strategies than they are dedicated revenue sources. Often with special assessments or tax increment financing, you need to know what that specific project is. So we acknowledge that as a tool and thought that was important, but we don't have a number to go with it. We also forecasted out if the 9-cent fuel tax was renewed. So that's a penny per gallon of fuel that goes to the local governments for transportation. That's set to expire, I think, in 2031. And I mentioned earlier that second local option fuel tax, that additional 5 cents per gallon that has not ever been levied in Hillsborough County, but is statutorily available if elected officials in the community wanted to pursue that. We also included a forecast if the community investment tax were to be renewed. Right now, the CIT sunsets in 2026. And for those of you not familiar with it, it's a 0.5% sales tax that goes towards schools, bonds for Raymond James, transportation, parks, lots of different things. But it's a very important funding source, and a portion of that does go to transportation. And it sets a sunset. So we forecasted if it were to be renewed using the exact same formula that is applied today. And then additionally, we included a forecast if the transportation surtax, that 1% sales tax for transportation projects, were to become effective, albeit no sooner than 2029, as just a decision point for the community to weigh in on. Again, this does not commit us to anything. This is just, hey, what could be on the table for transportation? So we have that number available if we hear from interested parties that this is something that would be of value to continue to work through. We also have some projections if more property tax were used for transportation. Right now, it's not, or a very small proportion is. So just for information, if 1 mil for all the jurisdictions were to go to transportation, what would that generate? So we've got that in our back pocket, as well as if there was an expansion of the off-street parking program. Also in the report are forecasts for these different potential funding sources. So we have a number to go with if you had a fee on Ubers and Lyft, or if you had an additional vehicle registration fee for transportation. We just caveat with that would require a change in state law to enable that authority to do that, but we still thought it was important as a point of information for the community's consideration. So this is just a summary of all the revenue sources that I talked through today, but this next slide is, I think, the most compelling, even though it's small. So all the colors that aren't blue, those are existing funding sources, but everything in that electric blue to the right, that's the projection if we pursue some of those potential funding sources. So this will really come in handy when we move forward through the LRTP and all the needs assessments come through and identify, we really need a greater investment in resurfacing and operations and maintenance and safety. This will be helpful to have to know, okay, well, if that's a priority for our community, here's how we can fund it given the existing and potential resources. So I've kind of already hit on some of those next steps. I think the most exciting next step for this work is informing these cost feasible scenarios where we'll come back to the board, we'll come back to all the committees, we'll come back to the public, illustrating, okay, we heard that transit was important. What if the CIT was extended and a portion of that went to fund transportation? So we'll be soliciting your input, I think, next month on what those scenarios should be based on these initial data points. And then we are targeting an October 2024 adoption date for the long range plan. So I know that was a lot, but I'd be happy to take any questions or comments, but the action before you today is to consider approving the revenue forecast and recommend approval to the TPO board.
CIT is voted on by referendum, is that correct?
Yeah, a change in the legislative session require that has to be referendum as well as any other fuel tax. So if the 9 cent or the second option local fuel tax, that would also have to go to referendum. So that's a new barrier that was put in place this past legislative session.
Okay, because fuel tax didn't used to have to be, it used to be board approved. Okay.
Yeah, that's changed.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And then, so in referendum just means popular vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Questions? Can you go to the slide that had the revenue forecast? It was right before next steps. The potential off-street parking fee, is that related to like the city of Tampa's off-street, like parking, like their parking garages, or is that a tax on private parking spaces countywide?
So how we got that number is, I think that the person's name is Fed. We talked with the city of Tampa off-street parking, the fee, and got their initial numbers of what can be used for transportation, and then also a proportion of unincorporated county. So it's basically anything owned by the city that can be used for transportation or the county. Probably isn't as high of demand in unincorporated county for something like this, hence basically the negligible funding, but that's how we try to document that.
So it's not, because I know this might be more important, other jurisdictions tax each space, whether it's public or private. So like Citrus Park Mall would pay a huge amount of money because they've got all that surface parking. And did you guys look at that separately, or is that even legal in Florida? First question.
Truthfully, I don't know if there's enabling authority to do that. That's a great point that we can look into, but what that is purely like the fee to park, not an additional tax.
It's not like a property tax.
Probably be like a specific property tax for parking.
Right,
Yeah.
if you've got
Yeah.
5 spaces, you're taxed 5 spaces. You've got 300 spaces, you can tax
Given,
more.
Commissioner Press is not here today. I know that they've been collecting, and you guys have seen like packets, EV parking, wherever you can drop some coins under the seat cushions and stuff. So like City of Tampa has been using some of the parking fee money to fund the e-bike voucher program. So I think this was a collective tool. We just started with City of Tampa. There isn't a parking source other than City of Tampa that I know.
Well,
So it's City of Tampa.
Right, my thought is, and I'm gonna give you all what's going through my head. The more suburban type development pattern that we have, the people, I mean, we're taxing people that are in more of an urban setting, right? By having a fee, because like when I'm down here, I don't drive anywhere all day. The people that are out in the suburban area are impacting all of us by deciding to do every little task, driving to separate spaces. So if we can develop a system that they should be paying more for what I know they were already paying the gas tax, but you may not be paying that. But so that's where I think that needs to be explored. I mean, if the state doesn't allow it, then that cuts it off. But they're the ones. Well, yeah, the comp plan can only do so much. But
It can encourage.
yeah, we can encourage. Do little flag ups.
So a couple of questions. The CIT percentage, or CIT is levied on sales tax, is that correct? And do you know what the percentage is?
So the collection is a 0.5% of that, but 25% of that collection goes to the school board. Then another portion goes to Raymond James, and then it's distributed by formula to the county and then the 3 other
Okay,
municipalities.
but it's a half penny sales tax basically.
Yeah.
And then just to the parking revenues that we had, they actually, that was part of the budget discussion last night. And there were $7 million for parking that we were going to update basically a guidance system,
Right.
but then it got pushed into the transportation's budget. So mobility, it's same department, but it is going to like street resurfacing, sidewalks and that kind of stuff. So
You didn't absorb it.
we killed the guidance system program, or council did, I should say, and then put it into transportation.
So just for my own clarification, the parking department now generates income, because I know for years it was
Yes, it
a
does.
deficit, so that's good.
So what was generated is getting moved to mobility to spend.
Well, it's still mobility, it's same department, but getting moved from parking they're taking away, they were going to purchase a guidance system to like tell people where to park basically.
Okay, that's what I meant. I think
And
I-
then now it's going to research, it's being transferred into transportation engineering division.
Okay.
We had talked several months ago, one of the ideas that came up was even like coming into the city or any of the cities where you pay a toll on any of the major streets to come in. If we were to do something like that, which bucket would that fall under?
We didn't even try to forecast that because I know for a fact that that's not enabled by state law. So there would have to, something have to come from Tallahassee to update Florida statutes and then go through that.
Well, it's good to know. We didn't know whether that could be done or not.
Yeah. Talk to your legislature.
That's unfortunate.
One more thing,
Yeah.
red light camera running, speed cameras, is that enforcement fees? Is that a funding source that you looked at?
That's a really great point. We did not include that just given how new it is, because I think there was new legislation to allow it in school zones. So there isn't really any data to have a baseline yet on what that could generate for transportation or even if there are any parameters. So red light camera fees, you're probably talking about just the general ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not included in here, but that's a really great point. So I'll look into that.
like $10 of every ticket goes to trauma centers.
Yeah,
Learned that yesterday.
but I thought we weren't really using them that much in Hillsborough County. And I can,
The red light
They're
camera
not
fee?
like-
yeah.
We have a few, and it generates a good amount of money.
It's
Yeah.
40th in Hillsborough. Husband got.
Yeah, well, his money's gonna go to a roadway project.
Yeah.
But we do have some, I think like right now, I don't know how much we generate per year, but we could look that up in our.
Okay, and it comes to the city?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Thank you.
Every penny comes to the city?
No, a lot of it's to the process, or it goes through the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, $10 goes to TTH.
It was 200 and
I had,
260 something. No, it was expensive. Cheap.
Well, some detectable more than that.
I had a question about the Hearts Fair. Because I would assume that because there are some transit agencies that have moved away from collecting fares, and of course, ridership increases. Is that, where you showed it, is that showing just the money generated, not all the money that then is deducted to manage the collection of the fee? You know what I mean? Because is it pure profit at that point, or is it we generate this much we'll say we generate $5 million, but 4 million, but 4 million is for just the managing of the money and the people that have to make sure the money gets to the bank and the machines to collect it and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, no, those operating costs are still there. So just for the example for streetcar, there's a very generous DOT grant that has supplemented those fares in Hart's budget. So that's documented in our forecast, kind of in two places, in those state and federal grants. And then on the other side on this slide for Hart, any of revenues available to them, ad valorem, advertising that they need to maintain and operate their service. So it's all included, just kind of in different ways.
And Justin, let's turn his camera on. Ed has a question for Cal, so he can unmute himself.
All right.
Hey, I was just wondering if the council talked anything about parking revenues being used for transit.
I don't know. You can go watch the replay and let me know. I wasn't tuning in.
Okay,
So not sure on that one.
thanks.
All right, well, any other questions? Have to take an
No
action.
more creative sources of money that I
Right.
forgot.
Want to make a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Second. Danielle, thank you. Danielle seconded. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
All right, next we have status reports. FDOT Resiliency Action Plan.
It should be a meeting and joining us.
Thank you.
There she is.
Good morning. Hopefully you have our slides to pull up.
I can do that, or I can make you presenter, even better.
Okay, I can present if that's easier for you. Let me,
Yeah, it's not
Pull up.
really recognize you as a presenter. Okay. This Wizard of Oz thing. It's a little crazy.
So,
It shouldn't take too long.
I'm trying to get the right slides up before I,
Yeah, me too. We'll see.
before I share.
Wins. Sorry.
And then, hold on, now I can't see the meeting. I can't see you, but I'm gonna go ahead and show it.
Let me do it.
Screen. Do you,
All right, I got it up. I beat you.
okay, that'd be better.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Now
So you have it up on the screen?
I have it in the room. Now I'm going to make it visible to everyone else. Hold on.
Okay, great. Can you all hear me okay?
yes, yep.
Okay, great. All right.
Jason! Oh, wait, here it is.
Sorry, I should have been ready to share that. We really appreciate the opportunity to have a chance to give you an update on our resilience planning that we've been doing at the Department of Transportation. I'm Jennifer Carver. I'm in our central office up in Tallahassee in our Office of Policy Planning. So what I've been working on is our statewide resilience plans, and I know you have some folks from District 7 in the room and online, so if there are any very specific questions related to what's happening in the district, we'll all work together to answer them. I also have my colleague Tony Fry on the call as well, so we work in partnership on these plans. So if you can go to the next slide. Just a brief overview. Sorry?
No, you're good. You're good.
Good, okay. So just a brief overview. We have 2 resilience plans that we've been working on in the last year. The first is our resilience action plan that provides an understanding of statewide issues and offers a uniform and consistent approach that can be applied and refined based on local conditions. So this was a plan that was included in the statutes and required by Section 339 of the Florida statutes. And the goals are shown here on the slide that set forth in the statute signed by the governor. So it's looking at enhancing infrastructure and operational resilience, looking at design changes to retrofit and incorporate into new facilities, and to look at enhancing partnerships to looking at multi-jurisdictional needs. The Resilience Action Plan was required to have FDOT focus on the state highway system for this plan, to look at all of our policies and procedures and to incorporate technical assistance to help communities and around the state work with us on local and regional resilience solutions. So that plan was completed. It was due to the governor and legislature by June 30th, and it will be updated and reported on every 3 years. So we did do for that plan a vulnerability assessment that focused on, as I said, state highway system, and then really the water related hazards of flooding, storm surge, and sea level rise. So if you go to the next slide, you can see kind of while we're starting to work on implementation of the Resilience Action Plan, we have a lot of strategies in the plan for incorporating resilience into all areas of the department's business, consistent with our resilience policy that we enacted back in April of 2020. So we've got strategies in the Resilience Action Plan looking at planning, PD&E, design, materials, construction, operations, emergency management, and asset management and maintenance. So really looking at all areas of our business. And we're also working to integrate resilience into all of our plans and guidance. We're looking at data and tools. We did develop a data viewer for the Resilience Action Plan that's available on the website. We also have several other tools that we have developed over the years, including a sea level scenario sketch planning tool and a new report that's part of our environmental screening tool that's used in PD&E. There's an area of interest tool that has a resilience report now. So we've got a lot of information that we're working on how to get information out there that can help communities look at their transportation resilience. We're continuing to do a lot of coordination, identify training opportunities, and communicate resilience and how we're incorporating that into the transportation work. So on the next slide then, once we finish the Resilience Action Plan, the federal PROTECT program, which is the Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation, that was a resilience program that was included in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act signed back in 2021. So that program provides both formula and discretionary grant funding for resilience components of projects or projects that focus solely on resilience with a focus on natural hazards and encouraging natural solutions. As part of that program, there is an optional resilience improvement plan that agencies, state DOTs or MPOs can prepare that, if that is approved, can provide for an increased federal share of work funded under the PROTECT program. So now I want to just give you a brief overview of where we are on preparing our statewide resilience improvement plan and go over a little bit of the key components and how we're handling that, because we're building, if you go to the next slide, we're building on our resilience action plan. Sorry, next slide, one more. We're building on our resilience action plan and the work done there to develop this resilience improvement plan. And so what you see here on this slide is a list of the different requirements and components that are included in the federal statute for development of the resilience improvement plan. And there's several different categories of requirements. So there's things that it says you shall do. So you shall look at immediate and long range planning and resilience investments. You will look at a system-wide approach. You will be consistent with state and local hazard mitigation plans that are done through the FEMA requirements, and you will include a risk-based assessment of vulnerability. And then there are some things that are shall as appropriate. So additional things about looking at improvements, looking at natural infrastructure, looking at community infrastructure resilience, and looking at a long-term planning period. We've determined that those things are all appropriate for us, so we are incorporating those. And then there's a few items that you may incorporate, looking at evacuation routes and strategies, looking at planning for emergencies, looking at your resilience policies, and investment plan and priority projects. So these may items are optional. Most of them we're already doing, so we're incorporating them. And then one of them, the investment plan and priority project list, is required to get some of the increased federal share for projects. So we are incorporating that as well. So a little bit of what's different in this plan, moving from the resilience action plan to the resilience improvement plan, is this risk-based assessment. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But for the resilience action plan, we really looked at those water-related hazards that I mentioned, and we looked at what's called exposure, that component of risk. So we looked at where would those hazards occur and what transportation, what state highway system facilities would be affected by those hazards. So we're expanding that assessment. I'll show you that in a minute. Also a priority project list. And then another requirement that's different from the resilience improvement plan is that the plan be more multimodal. So we're going beyond the state highway system to look at additional facilities as well. So this is a plan that will be reviewed and approved by the Federal Highway to hopefully give us that up to 10% federal share on the projects. If you go to the next slide. So we coordinated and reviewed the updated version of the state hazard mitigation plan that it's prepared by the Division of Emergency Management. And so we have added some hazards that we will be incorporating beyond those that were in the resilience improvement plan or resilience action plan. So adding wildfire, sinkhole, extreme heat, and severe thunderstorm, focusing there on wind and lightning. And also we're looking at sea level rise. So the first 6 here are the priority hazards that are addressed in that state hazard mitigation plan that is developed by the Division of Emergency Management. There are other hazards in that plan as well. Those will be mentioned in the plan, but we're not choosing to go in depth on those additional hazards for this iteration of the resilience resilience implementation plan. Or improvement plan, sorry, get my names mixed up. On the next slide, you'll see the assets that we're looking at. So the first box there was state highway system. That was the only set of assets we looked at in the resilience action plan. So adding to that for this resilience improvement plan, we're also looking at the national highway system, the federal aid system, the SIS highway corridors and rail and connectors, the freight highway network, the STRANet and STRACnet, which are defense access and strategic rail corridor networks. And then also focusing more on multimodal, we're looking at the SunTrail network as well, the constructed and programmed parts of the SunTrail, and then evacuation routes. So we've got a wider range of assets that we're evaluating as part of this plan. And then on the next slide, you can see that we're taking this systemic approach as required by the statute to look at a range of assets, and then to also look at associated infrastructure that is comes along with those stormwater systems, the intelligent transportation systems, and other operations equipment, and looking at bicycle and pedestrian facilities as well. And then we have a number of other plans that we have at the state level that we are coordinating with. So the state, as I mentioned, the state hazard mitigation plan, the local mitigation strategies, which, as you probably know, are the local plans, the Florida Transportation Plan, which is our wide-ranging plan for all of Florida. We're getting ready to start an update of that plan, but we did a lot of resilience work in the last version of that plan. And then our 5-year work program and our state transportation implementation plan that looks at what projects are actually being funded, and then our transportation asset management plan, which focuses on how we will maintain our assets, focusing mostly on roads and bridges. We will have a draft of the plan in November, and we do plan to have a 2-week public comment period for that plan, so everyone can get a chance to look at it. Again, this is, we're kind of doing an iterative approach here, so this is not the end of all of our resilience planning. It's our kind of start to get that additional federal share, and we'll keep working to incorporate resilience into all of our work and work with our communities to increase resilience and that. So if you go to the next slide, that was a brief overview. I wanted to see what questions you might have that we might be able to answer, or if we can't answer them, we can get more information.
Questions? Anybody? No questions here.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. You guys are big into sustainability. I'd be pleased to see this. She must have done a really good job.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have any questions, but thank you for presenting to us.
Okay, great. If you flip to the next slide, you can see the work plan, just knowing that we've got a number of approvals that we need to get, and we're working on developing the plan, and we'll have that public comment period. And then on the last slide, if you have any questions, please send me or Tony an email, and stay away from flooded streets. I'm sure you all know that very well.
Right. When you have it, I'm sure we'll get copies of the, push for outreach during the comment period. So I'll share with the committee in case they want to go in the comment.
Great, please do. We'll make sure that will go out to all the MPOs. So we'll make sure that if you can send those out to all your committees, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Harmony, for doing the
Yeah,
slides.
our
We
band.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. The next, we have Ben with the coordinated planning for trails and greenways. Hello, Ben. Or just so Gail knows, Danielle is leaving.
Yeah, Danielle had communicated she had a conflict. Hi, Danielle. Hi.
All right, thank you all again for having me. Ben Gordon, Hillsborough TPL. And just to start off, this is going to be a presentation focused on just coordinated trails planning efforts in Hillsborough County and across the state. And I think if there's one thing you should take away from it, it's that MPOs in the Tampa Bay area have been taking the lead on coordinated trails planning since 1995, when I was -3 years old, which is awesome like that. So let's see.
You don't need to.
Rub it in.
Humor me, I'm sorry. Some of our efforts, they involve cross-agency coordination on large-scale statewide initiatives. So for example, we work with the Florida Greenways and Trails Council, which is part of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. They advise the department on issues of intergovernmental cooperation and private partnerships for developing a greenways and trails system. They also approve Florida Greenways and Trails System priority corridors, a network of proposed trails across the state. And the Florida Department of Transportation takes those trails and basically refines them into a funded network, which it calls the Sun Trail Program. Establishing the program in 2015 alongside prior efforts to plan the Coast to Coast Trail, this began really the first truly regional projects in Florida. Now, on a more local level, the earliest foundations for regional trails planning were laid in 1993 with the West Central Florida Trails Coordinating Committee, which created a multi-use trail committee in 1995. And the next major organizational development didn't come until about 10 years later, when the Tampa Bay Regional Transportation Planning Authority, basically the WCF-CCC, contracted them to conduct regional trails planning in the area. And their staff member, Anthony Mattanti, held meetings of all the Gulf Coast Trail counties. And that, alongside the Coast to Coast Trail, did quite a bit to just increase local momentum for those statewide regional trails. By 2018, the legislature changed key BARDA to focus solely on transit, and regional trails planning shifted back to the CCC, which rebranded as the Sun Coast Transportation Planning Alliance, SCTPA, in 2021. Now, on a more local scale, the TPO has championed several successful inter-county trail projects, beginning with the Friendship Trail Bridge, which stood from 1999 to 2008 as a trail. And although that bridge is no longer standing, that trail made a lasting impact, because now we're moving towards having trails on all 3 bridges across the bay, from Hillsborough to Pinellas. And a study proposing Courtney Campbell Causeway Trail was conducted in 2007, and the trail was conducted by 2013. The Courtney Campbell Trail, it currently dead ends in Cypress Point Park, but there is an additional side path that the city of Tampa completed along Cypress Boulevard from the park to the West Shore Interchange. From there, FDOT is working on a connecting trail through West Shore Interchange, where it will then connect to the existing I-275 Greenway. That Greenway will extend east to the Riverwalk and connect to Adamo Drive through the Riverwalk and South Greenway. And from Adamo Drive, it will connect to a trail facility on the newly reconstructed Maydell Bridge. And then the South Coast Greenway continues south through Palm River, Gibsonton, Apollo Beach, Ruskin, and Wamama to Manatee County. All these trails will be part of the Gulf Coast Regional Trail, which was originally called the Southwest Coastal Regional Trail. But yeah, now it's Gulf Coast Regional. And one group that was really played an important role in these Gulf Coast Trail efforts was the Trust for Public Land, which is a nationwide nonprofit that does work in nature conservancy and trails planning. And they coordinated with both public agencies and private partners to fill in the gaps on the trail. And so, of course, that's really just the foundation of so much of these trail coordination efforts are those public-private partnerships. Now, speaking just at a countywide level, our first countywide trail planning efforts began with the Hillsborough County Greenways Master Plan in 1995, and that's actually currently being updated right now. The Upper Tampa Bay Trail segments were planned in 2003, and those became one of the first major trail sections completed. By 2015, the MPO, now the TPO, had completed a feasibility study for the bypass canal trail along the 14-mile waterway, which connects the lower Hillsborough Wilderness Preserve with McKay Bay. And the follow-up on this project has been good, with County Public Works just completed PD&E in 2022. And so that sets the stage for design and construction pretty soon. Now, finally, in 2016, the TPO completed an update of the City of Tampa's Greenways and Trails Master Plan that created a combined single plan for Tampa and Hillsborough County. But unfortunately, that plan was not adopted, and the work continued into 2022 with community infrastructure and planning now bottom lining that. So city level trails planning, that's been an area where the TPO has also done its part with our partners. And all of the city's municipal trail studies were conducted by the TPO, with the exception of the Tampa Greenways Master Plan. And the 6 phases of the Tampa Bay Walk Bike Plans examined citywide roadways for bicycle and pedestrian improvements, with 1 phase focused on downtown, and another on USF, 2 linked to the Green Artery, and the West Tampa Multimodal Plan as well. Now, the Green Artery, it actually originated as a community initiative that we further studied when it was brought to us by a group that had already set up a nonprofit and been doing advocacy with neighborhood associations for this trail. And so that's something that we're glad that we did, was engaging with that proposal that kind of came from the grassroots. The Plant City Canal Trail Plan was also completed most recently in 2023, and that came as a direct result of our walk bike plan in 2017. The Dale Mabry Overpass is going to be part of the I-275 Greenway, and that's at the Midtown Tampa development with I-275 on one side. And that development, they've been supportive of the initiative, and we've asked FDOT to complete the overpass and other segments with adjacent phases of their Tampa Bay Next program. And so finally, as things stand, we're working with our partners in Tampa, Hillsborough County, Plant City, and Temple Terrace, just trying to fill in gaps in the existing network that we've been building up over the past 2 decades. And that includes supporting applications for Sun Trail funding, as well as transportation alternatives funds from FDOT. Last year, we did get more certainty from TCO about the use of their corridors along their utility lines. Prior to its sale to Emera, which is a Canadian multinational firm, we had expected that we would be able to move forward with them using their routes, but that's no longer on the table. So that has at least, it spurred us to be creative and sort of rethink where we can go to finish these trails. And one new opportunity that is presenting itself is with the pipelines for Tampa Bay water. Now, one major issue that we have with TCO were portions of the South Coast Greenway because of a new pipeline being built to the South County area. Tampa Bay Water is bringing really new alternative opportunities. That pipeline is going to be 26 miles long. It's in the South County area, just where we needed it. And where we've been getting some good signs that could be a path up instead. And yeah, that's all I got. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Glenn?
Beth, the Tampa Bay Water, I just reviewed a report on that, and most of that, a lot of the South County portion of that is proposed to go under the road. So I'm not sure how you would get a bikeway in there if it's under, you know, the lanes of the road. So I think maybe you might want to look into that.
Yeah, you're right, that's something to consider.
They have two reports. It's, like, get your email address. I can send them, it's an A and a B section of the 26 months.
I would definitely take a look at the overlap with the gaps.
And really, it's, you know, just a line on the map. But the report explains where it's placed. That's okay, no problem.
So with Tampa Bay Water, are we working with their general counsel to like get like an agreement to pursue using an easement on some of their properties? Because they have more than just the pipeline. South County, is that what you guys are pursuing?
I do think so. I think it's very preliminary, but
Okay.
I should probably.
I happen to know their attorney that does all their locals and stuff, so if you need help.
Any other questions? All right, I have one regarding TICO, and you might not know the answer, but it's my understanding that TICO, like, it's probably once every 30 years, has to come and renew a contract because they're a public, I think they did that in the city of Tampa, not 10 years ago.
It's an agreement. I
It's
think
an
it might be
agreement.
25. I think it's up in like 2033 or something like that.
Right, so are we ensuring as a county that when the contract comes up again, right, that the use of some of their, unless it's like a homeland security issue, I mean, that should be, I would think, part of some future agreement. It might be 20 years down the road. But you'll have to get to them at that point. No?
No, it's the franchise agreement deals with utilities within the right of way. It has nothing to do with what they do on their own land. So it wouldn't be part of the franchise.
But they run a monopoly basically within the jurisdiction. It's not
Right,
like
but
you
it's
get to choose.
But it's more about like permitting and how they're allowed to permit, because they do a lot of work in the right of way. They can't go through a right of way, the standard right of way permit each time. It doesn't have anything to do with what they do with their own asset. So.
Well, that's a shame, but.
Don't give them the money. So why did the Canadian company say no?
I'm not entirely sure. It might just be a matter of rapport that we had beforehand, before that transition.
Well, I would just say, let's not give up on, putting pressure on TICO, because, I mean, they want to be a good neighbor. I know they already get flagged for tree cutting and just kind of going down and destroying trees. So they should provide some, besides electricity, some community benefit. I think if we just, that's beyond what you can do. But Larry?
I agree with you, David. On the South County Greenway where we cross Big Bend, we were supposed to go east and they have a corridor there that goes north, and we were supposed to go down that corridor. And they denied us. So we had to move the proposed new location is on, I forget the name of the road. It runs parallel to 75 on the east side of 75. So it got moved, and then it kind of has to jog back to that alignment to match where it's going through.
They denied use of one of their one of those massive corridors.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Because there wasn't enough room for a sidewalk.
Couple hundred feet wide corridor.
Wow.
And that's to the west of 75. That's the one that crosses the L5 there. They have a corridor. Is that where am I in the total wrong area?
I think that's further.
Have we ever thought about TICO being on one of these committees?
Yeah.
They're in the roadways.
Right.
They certainly don't make very livable a lot of
They
times.
do affect a lot of what we do, like shade and the lack of, because of
Oh, and also putting thousands of poles right in the middle of sidewalks so that people can't get down in strollers and wheelchairs.
I could proceed getting him as a guest speaker, but I don't know, regular, you know.
They want to come here.
It would be helpful to have them here so that they could ask them those questions.
Yeah.
Why is there a pole in the sidewalk? You know, maybe their rationale might be different than what we understand, but
Yeah,
chances are.
we've
it might not.
had them, okay, decades ago, I was a member, they came because we had all kinds of lighting issues, you know, we had like 5 types of lights, none of them were sustainable, none of them were LED, this is way back before it was really prominent, yeah, and like, why, you know, like,
And they have
elected
farm
official,
stores.
make sure they were here, we did kind of grill them for you. But they do a lot of community, grants and sponsorships too, so.
Well, they may need to
To say, oh, it's all bad.
get, public relations people, maybe need to work on
Yeah.
or something, because
And it helps with the Vision Zero effort. So it might be just, yeah, some communication. So put that down as a particular idea for future.
right.
I'm
sorry.
Sorry,
You go.
we're not in new business yet.
All right. Any final questions for Ben? No. All right, thanks, Ben.
Thanks,
We'll
thank
see
you.
later. All right, next on to old business. So there you go, Lisa.
Okay, yes. So whole business, the committee requested a copy of the community infrastructure planning letter on the item that was presented last month by Public Works, and so that's in your packet. I will announce that, you know, I told you that I was going out with outreach for the Vision Zero Safe Streets for Slide Waters. We had our first workshop on September 12th. We're having an additional one on October 10th, so any way you can help push and promote that would be great. But even at the very least, you can do the 10-minute survey that you can visit from the website or the QR code on the flyer. And then something that has come up, and I think I might actually have flexibility in a future agenda, that's been a request, Larry, is that the Public Works Department has updated landscaping standards, and they have that landscaping funding that they have to do on their roadways, and having a deeper dive into understanding what that fund is, how much might be in it, what you guys are applying the funds to. Could you hook me up with who and how I would get that as a future topic? Like, it's like 50,000 every mile of roadway has to go towards a funding of,
It might be Alan Howe,
okay.
but I'm not sure. He's the arborist,
Okay,
landscape architect.
okay, if I copy you, it's because you're the member and I'm going through and making sure you know.
And we're going to update some of those landscape standards, but we haven't met with him yet. And when we do that, it'll be in a design bulletin. I don't know if you're familiar with the design
Yeah.
bulletins we started 4 years ago.
Yeah, I knew he was doing some edits. He hasn't been to this committee in a while, and when we brought up the funding, I thought, well, let's talk about it again. That's what this committee's all about.
We haven't set a meeting up with him because I'm trying to finish this new manual that we're doing, HCGDM, which we're going to publish here and hopefully next month.
Right.
So then after that, we'll start working on the landscape.
Great, okay. Well, it might be fortuitous timing then, because it's not urgent. I just thought I might have a gap, but we have to add that as a topic that's enough. Street trees and how the medians are treated is always ongoing.
We're going to do a lot of detailed changes in those things. And, they came out with a new palette for trees. Instead of the oak trees that kind of, the roots kind of tear up the sidewalks and the curbing. They came out with a new palette. We're going to come out with a new detail that explains the clearances that you need. It's in the TTM manual, but it's in like 3 different places. And so we're gonna have a detail that shows the clearances for street trees so that roots don't tear up the sidewalks and curbing. But, and additional, he told me he has a bunch of additional, I don't know the extent of the changes on a lot of the details in the TTM details that are in there on the trees.
Okay. Is there a special event, Kevin, that you attended?
Oh, how'd you know? No, we're still on old business, new business.
Old, new, it's all.
Just a reminder, folks, we do have World Car Free Day this Saturday, September 23rd, in both West Shore, downtown Ybor City. I know Emily has been a part of some of the planning, and it's really been a team effort. So if you have time on Saturday, come on down. The weather is actually supposed to look great. I think it might be false fall for those of you who keep up with your Florida winters or Florida seasons. So it looks like low humidity, sunny skies, mild temperatures. So bring your bike, bring your family, bring your kids, bring your neighbors, your coworkers. Come on down. It'll be a lot of fun. And, hope to see everyone there.
Lots of prizes. Plan Hillsborough will have their table located in downtown Hillsborough, our downtown. What we have in the clean air monitoring that you've seen Lizzie present here is going to be demoed. You'll see Vision Zero sign all along the 5-mile corridor that connects to the 3 activation zones. And there are prizes, so you gotta come win some prizes.
Yeah, I was just with the e-bike this morning, and it's really sweet.
Yeah.
The e-bike giveaway, we have
I'm gonna win that.
about 5 other, let me know on record, Lisa Silva, so
Yeah.
she's gonna win the
If you
e-bike.
win it, we're gonna be.
You gotta bring it, yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta bring it here.
I can win, I'm not.
We gotta play to win. It's just like just like the lottery. You gotta play to win.
Yes,
So
yes.
definitely, if you go to any
Donate,
location,
win.
yeah, we will have a bike drawing. All the contributions go to Walk Bike
Yes,
Tampa.
thanks.
20% of the dollars donated do go towards
Yes,
projects.
infrastructure.
Yes. So please consider donating. Put your hat in.
Yes.
You might be surprised what you win.
You put $100 in, $20 goes to a new sidewalk, just say it.
Before we go to Ken, I had a question for last. You know how I'm mildly obsessed with street trees.
As you should be.
In this new design manual or landscape guidelines or whatever, I know up in the university area, the comp planners are really looking for that area, especially now with the Fowler study going on and really long-term going to be like the urban part of unincorporated county, right? Because the land uses, there may be recommendations that the land uses are going to go up. So it will be a much more urban character than anywhere else in the county. In these new guidelines, do they have, like, for instance, I think one of the recommendations are going to be much wider sidewalks, I would assume, because it's, if they're going to be recommending the land use go up. The kind of like out in front of this building, is there an option in the county for tree wells? So the tree isn't like way over here, it's actually in the right of way, like more urban pattern that we typically see like downtown Tampa?
Well, in the new typicals that we proposed, I have to, in the suburban typicals, it's not like, maybe not exactly the area that you're talking about, but in the suburban typicals, we took the bike lanes off of the street and put it as shared use paths.
Oh, okay.
And where we have the shared use paths, they're 10 feet wide on either side. Adjacent to those 10 shared use paths, so you have to have 4 feet of clear zone on either side. And they usually are green areas, but on the space between the shared use path and the right of way, we added an additional 4 feet for tree plantings. So was that, would that?
Yeah, I mean,
Now, he's asking about in the urban, so, C4 and higher, like, I guess you
Yeah,
have 6 and 5, but C4, that's urban. So you have the sidewalk right back curve, it's
Yeah.
like a downtown setting, like a Water Street has big, wide, and they have trees, proper, right tree, right species in the right painting format, so that they are alive and they are not disturbing.
We,
That's what this committee has always and forever been for.
It's just that I know that area is, it's kind of, it's not going to be what it is now, like all this kind of just driveways and stuff all over the place. So, yeah, I just want to make sure that, because 95% of the county is suburban, so, but I don't want little university area as it morphs into something else, kind of be like, you know, oh, well, we should have done, once everything's up there, it's too late to do it. So as these projects come in, or if a street is updated up there, then it reflects the future land use. Now, we're talking 20, 40, 50, that might not be around, but the, you know, just wondering if it's
It's on
somewhere
my
in
to-do
there.
list. I'll get Alan, the expert, to come, because he always does this with me, explains, well, this is why we do it this way, this is 70 feet and stuff, and then he can tell us what type of right of ways and where the street trees are.
the problem with that is, you know, a lot of the right of ways are constrained
Yeah,
and
you require this 4 feet on either side and
and
it's
we
still
can't do it, you know.
Well, that's why I
In
think
downtown Miami, and the immediate surrounding area, I worked in Dade County for 7 years. And I saw it go from, you know, places where they had, I worked on Brickell Avenue, and behind Brickell Avenue, there were these Florida homes. All those Florida homes, like 2 blocks of Florida homes to the railroad, are gone. And now there's all these high-rise buildings. So when the developers came in, they built streetscape type buildings where the sidewalks were 13 or 15 feet wide. They have sidewalk cafes and they have places to sit. And so that needs to be a deal where the developers and the county get together, or the city, whoever's doing it. And a lot of the areas that you're talking about are really, except for that area near the college. And you're talking about that Bruce V. Downs area.
well, right, kind of probably, I think the area unincorporated I'm thinking of is sure I got my directions right. I have to put a map in my head. West of the university, where there's a lot of suburban style, high density apartments now, but.
And more going in.
Right, and more gonna be more of an urban pattern than a suburban pattern. So like, right now, a lot have, you know, buildings plopped in parking lots. It's going to be more like, and this is what the comp plan is, it's more going to be like what's occurring over on Rome and Rome over here behind UT. That type urban where it's up to the street and you've got, you know, ground floor retail going on and stuff like that.
Unless you have the transit-oriented development overlay up there on Valor. And
Right, there will be some overlays. Those have to be worked out too.
Right, but there is the urban context in portions of the county.
I forget what you call it, but the code needs to be, I forget exactly the correct name for it, but it's where the code is written that the developers need to provide that space. If they don't, you know, if that's not on those particular streets, you know, it would be hard to get the developer to provide that extra right of way to provide these.
And I think there's going to be recommendations for that.
Yeah, we'll get Alan over and talk about it officially on there.
Right?
I have another item if we're done with this one.
Yeah.
I don't
Thank
want to
you.
jump in. Just giving everybody a heads up, right before our meeting next month on the 18th, we are going to have an information barbecue. It's a
brown bag quarterlies, what we call them, but this one will be at 8 a.m. So it will be bagels and coffee will be provided. And FSU's Dennis Smith will be here to share about an award-winning project, the North Star Legacy Communities, where a bunch of students recorded and documented legacy communities up in Tallahassee in the Gadsden County area, and shone a light on these great communities. So it's going to be a great project to learn more about.
Thank you very much. And I actually have something. The Community Design Awards for the Planning Commission are October 18th. Just remember, it's the same day as the Livable Roadways. Do meeting here and then party at the awards ceremony. So that's the 18th. You can get tickets on.
Tickets are online on sale.
Yeah, online on sale. Okay. Cal, sorry.
Just wanted to wish Lisa happy birthday.
Yeah.
That was a flower
show.
Okay, I was.
Sharon, I'm spending half the day in this room. That's all.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this month.
Just going to mention, National Walk to School Day is the first week in October. We have, at this point, 20 schools registered with sidewalk staffers. Would love to have some more. We have 2 larger events. We'll be at Potter Elementary with the school superintendent of schools and City of Tampa's Jane Duncan and the East Tampa CRA to do a press event around the 2 new crosswalks that were painted at that location by the East Tampa CRA. We will also be doing an early walk to school celebration on October 2nd at Woodbridge Elementary with Hillsborough County, who will be unveiling some of their plans for safer routes to school around that particular school, which they have studied in the last year.
Say the name of that one again.
Woodbridge Elementary.
Okay.
So I'm really excited to see this growth.
Yeah.
Walking to school, and if you got kids or know any that you can get a hold of legally, walking to school on National Walk to School Day, and if you want to come help us, we would love it.
Okay. Count me in. Selfishly, I kind of want to go to Potter since I was out there sweating and painting.
You did, yeah.
And then she's modest that she's looking for grant opportunities to help pay for all this explosion of expansion. So
That's true. If anybody has lots of money. Because that's something everybody in transportation has.
you know, a little bit of money goes a long way.
We're looking for money too, if anybody.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that DC's looking, we have it.
Could you put this under health?
This is a Sidewalks Not First is a health initiative.
Yeah.
Do you know about the Florida Blue Grant Program?
No.
I'm going to send you something right now.
Awesome.
Send it to Lisa.
Yeah. I sent you like the community grants that came out through CTST's guy yesterday. I heard.
Yes.
But he does make a good point. We have
doing
grant writers on staff, so if you need to like send something through QC or something, that might be. And then there was a threat of an intern being hired to help with some of that stuff. So I was like, well, if they have capacity to also help our community partners, I think I could probably say that.
All right, I guess
Chair.
that's it. I move that we adjourn. Any opposition to that, so.
Yeah.
Do I need to click the gavel? Have a good day.
Lots of fun, chat. See you next month. Remember,